Overpaying for anything sucks, especially socks, so why pay $45 for a single pair of grip socks when you can spend less than half? Pure Grip Socks Pro feature our best materials for optimal fit, moisture wicking, and performance at a fair price, just $16.99 a pair at puregripsocks.com.
Football boot brands spend millions of dollars a year on marketing to try to convince us as consumers that their latest and greatest products are better than what they had before and better than the products that we currently have, all in the name of trying to convince us to not just buy new football boots, but to buy more football boots. But what if I told you that newer is not better? This is actually a lie in the football boot industry. Case in point being the Nike Phantom GT2 Elite that I have here in the mid-cut DF variation in the brand new Shockwave colorway. This is a fine pair of football boots and something that I would say is as good as just about anything at the top end level. But if we take a look at the history, the lineage of the Nike Phantom series, this is not as good as the last 4 Phantom models. And for $275, I think you would expect them to be better. And of course, this is all just personal opinion, but what I want to do in today's video is compare the Phantom GT2 to the models that came before them and determine whether or not Nike is actually improving year after year or just getting a little bit worse. So if you're interested in learning more, including how the boots fit and feel on feet, please stick around and watch the entire review. And if you are interested in a pair for yourself, you can get them below their normal retail price by way of some exclusive SR4U coupon codes by checking out the first link down below. As always, if you guys do end up enjoying the video and perhaps want to see more reviews where I compare the new models to the models that came before them, please don't forget to support this one with a like. And also guys, I have a goal of hitting 750,000 subscribers before the end of the year. So for those of you guys that watch the content, enjoy it, but maybe aren't subbed, it would mean the world to me if you could hit that subscribe button along with the little bell notification so you get notified when the next new video goes live. So Nike Phantom GT2, by Nike standards, I would say it's a pretty basic pair of football boots in that it's a plain Jane Flyknit base with their generative texture covering the surface of the upper, which is basically these little chevrons, some smaller than others, scattered across the entire upper, giving it this kind of rough texture on the surface that does provide additional grip on the ball without being sticky. The Flyknit base doesn't really have much padding to it, so the touch overall is quite thin and also maybe a little bit lacking in softness. So I think if you're expecting a sock-like sensation from something branded as a Flyknit upper, you're getting it to a certain extent, although I don't think these are as soft as previous Flyknit boots from Nike, nor do I find them as comfortable. Of course, this is the mid-cut model, which is why you have the DF collar. An extra 25 bucks for a pretty small collar. Personally, I don't think it's worth it, but that's a personal preference thing. The inclusion of Nike's ACC technology, which I don't think does anything, but a lot of people really buy into that concept. And then a split sole construction that I actually think is quite good, although ultimately does come across as kind of a cheaper, less impressive variation of what you get from the Mercurial series. As an overall package, it's unique in terms of what Nike's lineup currently is, so I'll give them that. But in terms of having a standout feature, aside from just having this crazy look, I don't think it's all that technically impressive. Before the Phantom GT2, we got the Phantom GT1, which is basically the same thing as the Phantom GT2, but without a 2 at the end. So it's basically the same thing and not something that we should really even consider in this conversation as a previous model. Here's the thing, when the original Phantom GT came out, it took over for 2 different Phantom lines within the Nike brand, the Phantom Venom and the Phantom Vision 2. Both football boots that I would much rather have over the Phantom GT1 or GT2. The Phantom Venom probably being the one that I miss the most. This too has a Flyknit base to it, but a Flyknit base that I think ultimately feels a lot more sock-like and comfortable on your feet, despite being pretty similar in terms of overall thickness, at least through the forefoot and toe box area, where it too features some interesting honeycomb texturing. Granted, not as grippy as what you're going to find on the Phantom GT, but not too far off either. A striking element that I always wish would have been a little bit more aggressive. I think actual rubber fins would have been awesome, but it must be said that from a striking perspective, the feel on offer from the Phantom Venom is probably the closest thing we've had to a power boot from the Nike brand since the Nike T90 laser line was killed off. You also have Flywire cables, as a structure element through the midfoot attached directly to the lacing system. This lace cover that I guess isn't entirely necessary, but ultimately looks pretty cool and doesn't really get in the way. A traditional low-cut construction, a fit that I think was very underrated for the time, and a sole plate and stud pattern that again was way more aggressive and just way better than I think a lot of people gave it credit for. This is a football boot that is still phenomenal by today's standards, and I rate them much higher than I do the current Phantom GT. Where the Phantom Vision 2 is basically the same concept as the Phantom GT, but in a form factor that I think fits better and ultimately feels more comfortable on your feet. It too features a fly-knit upper, with I guess the secret sauce here being the internal quad fit system that is attached directly to the lacing system. That's what's adding your structure inside of the boot without adding any significant stiffness. The end result is a touch on the ball that does feel softer and slightly more padded, just because there's more material when compared to the Phantom GT, but the upper is covered in all of this rough texturing that actually has some interesting variation on different parts of the upper that, granted, you can't really feel a difference in the texture variation, but if the idea is to provide extra grip on the ball without being sticky, this is basically the exact same concept that is just as effective as what's found on the current Phantom GT. I think the lace cover, while many would argue is unnecessary, gives the boot a cool look and feel compared to just about everything else on the market. I think the heel design definitely could have been a little bit more simple. This mock collar is just completely unnecessary. And the sole plate and stud pattern, while I don't think a standout from the Nike brand, you could argue that the Phantom GT has a little bit of a better sole plate and stud pattern layout. I don't think it's too far off, and ultimately one that I didn't really have too many complaints about. Before the Phantom Vision 2, we had the original Phantom Vision, which basically follows all the same concepts that I just explained, in that it's a fly-knit upper with an internal quad fit system, lacing system covered up by a lace cover, an unnecessary collar that is a little bit higher than the Vision 2, micro texturing on the surface that does vary in certain areas of the foot, providing that extra grip on the ball, and the exact same sole plate and stud pattern, all in a package that I would argue offers a better overall experience than the current Phantom GT. If we go back even further, we find yet another pair of Nike Phantom model football boots that I would argue are better than the current Phantom GT, this being the Nike Hypervenom Phantom 3 in the low-cut variation. They did also make a mid-cut model. This too features a fly-knit upper reinforced by fly-wire cables with this 3D texturing scattered across the entire upper. Granted, not the same rough feel to the surface that you're going to find on a lot of the Phantom models that came after this, but an experience and certainly a fit and comfort level that I think is far superior to what we currently have from the Phantom GT2. The sole plate and stud pattern also feels really solid underfoot. Again, very underrated layout in my opinion, and something that I would much rather have over the current Phantom offering. It's not until you go all the way back to 2015 when Nike launched the Hypervenom Phantom 2 that we find a Phantom model from the past that I would actually choose not to wear over the current Phantom GT, although it must be said that during the second half of the Hypervenom Phantom 2 run, they switched back to that OG Nike skin upper with the flywire reinforcement, and that's a football boot that I would also rather wear over the current Phantom GT. And let's not even get started on the OG Hypervenom Phantom. I think it's safe to say that this is an all-time classic and a football boot that many people would prefer to wear over the current Phantom GT. Now, I don't want this video to come across as being too negative, because on feet, the Phantom GT2 does feel quite good. I don't have any significant complaints about it. I think the off-center lacing system, in combination with the shape that they've gone for, definitely could be modified to fit or wrap your foot a little bit more closely. But I also think that's one of those things that's going to vary a lot from person to person, depending on the shape of your foot. From a comfort perspective, there's not too much to complain about here. I have heard a lot of people mention that they had issues with blistering at the top of the internal heel counter, at the very back of the boot, kind of on the Achilles tendon. Personally, I've not had that issue with either Phantom GT 1 or 2, but it is definitely something to be aware of. I think comfort issues in general is something that you never really want to have in any football boots, let alone ones like these that retail for $275. From a width perspective, they definitely have decent width to them. They're widest through the midfoot and then kind of taper a little bit towards the toe box area. But I think for most people, they're going to be plenty wide enough as long as you don't have excessively wide feet. And then as far as sizing is concerned, I'm wearing these in my usual size 9.5 US, but the Phantom GT does run about a quarter size long, so it is something to be aware of. For most people, I still think true to size is probably going to be the way to go, but if you find that your boots are already a little bit too big, maybe going half a size down might not be the worst idea. But again, for most people, go for your normal size and you should be good to go. So to answer the question, are Nike going downhill? I think when it comes to the Phantom series, there's an argument to be made that they are, or at the very least, they are certainly not pushing the bar forward with every new model. I feel like the Phantom GT series, both the GT1 and GT2, is, while a solid pair of football boots, one that is very much driven by fancy marketing spiels that ultimately doesn't mean all that much and doesn't really translate into tangible performance benefits, or I guess more realistically, a unique enough feel to justify picking a Nike Phantom GT over other options from Nike as well as other brands. While I think the Phantom GT2 is a fine pair of football boots and one that a lot of people have and really enjoy wearing, I just don't think that it's anything special, at least as special as Nike would suggest it is.